Childhood is such an important time in our lives. And stories are a fundamental part of the human experience.
So in Australia, we did something a little bit different than the rest of the world. Our children's television standards said that children's programs should be child-specific, entertaining, and well-produced. When children's programs are competing for funding against prime-time adult shows, it's not always fair. Broadcasters will pay more, and investors, even government agencies, will invest more in prime-time content, leaving children's television with the little bit that's left. This makes it harder to produce children's shows with the ambition and the scale and the high production values that are required to make it truly successful. So for all these reasons, the Australian Children's Television Foundation, and I'm going to call us the ACTF from now on, was established to provide dedicated special funding and advocacy for Australian children's screen content, especially drama and scripted content. There's much to think about, but we must stay concerned with the quality of the content that children have access to on all those screens. Because as children grow, they're developing their sense of self, their identity, and their understanding of the world in relation to others. When children see their own lives reflected on the screen in ways which are relatable to their situation, they experience recognition and affirmation with characters and stories that help them imagine all the possibilities for someone like them. Likewise, when they see others who remind them of the children in their lives who might be different to them, they're encouraged to learn to love and appreciate the difference. In this way, children's screen content is both a mirror and a window in a child's life, with the capacity to influence in profound and positive ways. For more than 40 years, Australia has been producing high-quality children's programs, and they have entertained audiences at home and around the world. It's been made possible through that combination of content regulation and government support, on the basis that there is immense public value in screen content that speaks directly to Australian children and which reflects themes, culture, language, and social values.
一般我们在谈儿童影视节目的时候，我们会想到知识性，我们会想到教育性，但 Jenny 强调一件事情，让儿少看的节目，3个最重要的点当中，他提出了 entertaining， 它必须要有娱乐性。这样的状态是只有在澳洲，还是在挪威，或者是在加拿大，一样会很重视。 包括儿童影视产业娱乐性这件事情。
In Canada, it would be very similar to Australia in the sense that whether it's drama or non-fiction live-action shows, the audience of children are savvy consumers of content. They know quality. In a world now where they're consuming choices on tablets, where they get to control what they watch, they know instantly if something is of quality and whether it speaks to them. So the idea that you can do education, it's so possible to do education within a drama. There's lots to learn within a live action series set in the outdoor nature. There's lots to learn, and all of them can link to education. But it doesn't mean that they're a traditional, boring, didactic show, because any strong content creator in today's landscape knows that I think the data was something like you have 6 or maybe it's 8 seconds until a child will decide not to watch your show. So you really have to be having the quality to grab their attention, and that means you need to entertain them. But you can succeed at that and educate at the same time.
And for, I think that every program should be entertaining. If it's a boring program, nobody wants to watch it. I don't want to watch a boring program for adults. So why should children watch boring programs for children? Because it's educational. So you have to make good programs, entertaining programs with a good content. But this is the part of giving them a kind of identity. They learn from what they are seeing. And the best way to have your own identification is to have an identification which is connected to your culture, to your language.
你们提到儿童收看的影视内容，同时是一面镜子，也是一扇窗户。这一点，我想要了解，跟我们现在提这个问题，比方说就澳洲多数的这个儿童观众而言，为什么要让他收视有关于澳洲原住民的内容？这件事情的重要性是什么？他想要反映什么价值？
When I grew up in suburban Melbourne, I had very little understanding of Australia's First Nations people who seemed to live a long way away from where I was. And as we've evolved as a nation in the last 50 years, we've learnt that there isn't one particular Indigenous nation. We have many First Nations all over Australia with different cultural backgrounds, different stories, different languages. This is actually a journey our country has been on, a very, very important journey.
So each broadcaster would have kind of a common theme of how are you going to make sure you're embracing the diversity of Canada and representing all people. And again, this is my bias, but the value of preschool content really will help you feel confident that if you have a strong preschool content that's created that represents the children that you're focused on, you will be able to know that by the time they are age 7, 8, when they all start to move on and they're choosing to be on YouTube, their parents are no longer choosing everything. You've also influenced them to understand what quality is, to understand what is really riveting content. So although they may not know how to articulate that, they have been exposed to it, so therefore they become a bit of a connoisseur of what they want. So there will be, without question, potentially a time period where they aren't necessarily loyal to whatever the channel that is the local public broadcast ideas and channels, but realistically, they still have those memories of their childhood. It's a bit like what Jenny was saying. You've impacted them. It's imprinted in them of what was, you know, programming that really connected and related to them. So as they grow older, they have a chance that they can see opportunities and you know, different public broadcasters are choosing to have TikTok bits, they're choosing to be on YouTube, and they're finding ways to connect differently. So a lot of it comes down to who is the target audience and what is the age of that audience, to the vision and the decisions that should be made to affect it. But it is challenging and it is a universal, international challenge.
公共体系，不管是公共广播或是公共电视，在儿少影视产业在诸位3个国家扮演的角色。
In Norway, we have a lot of television channels, commercials, and one public service, which is NRK 1, 2, and 3. We still have some schedule, but for children and youth, they don't use the schedule. They do all the watching by streaming. So we have to cope with the future to be a part of it. The funding of NRK is done by the Parliament, and we are the only one who produce children's program. And that we put at least 40% of the budget to independent producers. And this is, and then they come in with their manuscript, with their ideas, and we develop it. But in Norway, we from 30 years ago, there was nearly only Norwegians and Lappish people living in the country. Now we are a multicultural country. We have a lot of people coming from Asia, from India, from refugees from other countries in Middle East and in Africa. So we are a multicultural country, and this has to be reflected in the way we cast for children's program and adult program as well. And I think we have managed to have a variety of children taking part in documentaries and in drama series with a different background. And I also, I mean, I'm doing some workshop in Asia on how to work with children, how to cast children for drama, how to train them for being actors, because they are not born actors, they have to be trained. And this is also for me, it's very important that you have to find some way. If you cast the right children, you have reached more than halfway to the goal to make a success. And if you train them a little bit, then you will have good actors as well. They have been running now for 15 years, and they are successful. And they are one of the few channels in Norway that, especially around Christmas, they have a higher score than YouTube. And the rest of the year, they are a little bit under YouTube, but before Netflix. So they are number 2 and number 1.
So my example of that, and possibly one of the biggest frustrations that I've ever had, is that I said earlier that the ABC, the public broadcaster, used to do much less Australian content than the commercial broadcasters and did a whole lot of imported programming. So we lobbied and went to Parliament for 3 or 4 years to argue that the ABC should have special funding to establish its children's channels. It's when we were setting up, or when, you know, digital television was taking off. And the ABC ended up being given a very large amount of additional money for those children's channels. And I thought, fantastic, we've changed the world. And for a couple of years, we had changed the world, that it transformed what they were doing.
我想进一步请教，我们又要怎么样让节目跟儿童产生连结，而不仅仅是让他们看到而已。
There is a fund in Canada called the Shaw Rocket Fund, which is they're the only funder currently right now, beyond the government funds for children's content. But one of the requirements they have in their application program is discoverability. So the creators have to have a plan of how they believe that their show will get discovered. But when you're working with kids content, that can be very unique and different. It could be that they plan to do kind of what Saturday out here will probably look like with lots of real kids in real life. They plan to take the stars of their show out across the country and meet real kids. They plan to, you know, do different contests. They plan to use social media as age appropriately different than how you might to an adult. But they also could turn around and want to do a family contest that again would be appropriate for social media for all of the intended audience. So I think when you're working in kids' content, you have to understand that you need to engage and make the children curious of what the program is and make them want it, but at the same time making adults aware it exists, making adults aware this could be fun, this could be co-viewing, this might be a show that, hey, this is, I'm okay watching this, is critical as well.
And I would say sometimes our film agency that invests in content in Australia, Screen Australia, will argue, well, not as many people watched that show, that children's show that launched last year compared to that adult show. But I can always turn around and say, but you wait 10 years, no one will remember that adult show that you funded, but that children's show, the ABC will still be showing it and the audience will still be watching it.